A Fox News alert: Israeli forces hitting key Hamas targets in Gaza. The IDF taking down more than 2,500 terror hubs since its ground offensive began, while at the same time ramping up strikes against Hezbollah in Lebanon. Israeli Minister of Strategic Affairs Ron Dermer joins us live from Tel Aviv with an update. Ron, thank you for joining us. From your perspective, we're a month from those horrific terror attacks on Israeli civilians. Where are we today? For our American audience, what is the state of Israel doing? What's the state of the war?
Well, we're certainly closer to victory because we first hit the terrorists from the air, and now we're going in on the ground. I'd love to tell you that we could eliminate Hamas, dismantle all its military capabilities, end its rule in Gaza, and prevent Gaza from becoming a continuous threat to Israel without going in the ground, but that can't be done. So our forces went on the ground a little over a week ago, and I think they've been very successful at rooting out a lot of the terrorist cells and killing a lot of terrorists. I think there's been upwards of 2,000 terrorists who've been killed, probably closer to 3,000 at least, because we don't know, because a lot of them are in these underground terror tunnel network. And when we bomb them, we don't know exactly how many people are down there, but it's very tough fighting, and our Israeli soldiers are doing it in a very deliberate way. We are trying everything we can do to get the civilians out of harm's way. Just in the last few hours, we've told people from the north, again, we have a safe corridor allowing them to go from north to south. But we have an enemy that is embedded in the civilian population. The IDF just released some videos about how they're using children's swimming pools and how they're using schools. We know they use mosques. We know they use hospitals. They use all of the civilian infrastructure to embed themselves, how this underground terror tunnel network. So going and rooting this enemy out is not a simple thing, but we have no other choice because we're not going to allow Hamas to survive in Gaza. It's not going to happen. So I think we're closer to victory today than we were a month ago, and we'll continue to push forward until we achieve our military objective.
Absolutely. It remains the same. You cannot tolerate a terror state on right next to you. Yet here we are, Ron, 1 week into the ground portion of this, as you just laid out, 1 week. And the UN is yelling ceasefire. And, you know, countries across the globe are yelling ceasefire. You've also got an administration here in the United States, which initially was very supportive. You know, whatever you need to do. Now we're hearing pauses. They've got protests outside the White House. Are you concerned about America's support for Israel? And how we saw Bibi Netanyahu say, hey, we're not stopping here. What will the response be if there are more attempts to pull Israel back?
Look, we're not going to have a ceasefire with Hamas. It's like you having a ceasefire after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, or you having a ceasefire with ISIS. It's absurd. And I was glad to see that the administration said they're not even asking for a ceasefire. As for humanitarian assistance, we have tried to do everything we can to get that humanitarian assistance to flow. Remember, Israel's not in charge of Gaza. Hamas is. And all of that assistance is coming from the Egyptian side. I think today they're supposed to have 100 trucks of food, water, medical equipment that should go to those people who need it, to UN facilities that are there where they're housing people. There's also a safe area in the southwest part of Gaza. So we're certainly open to doing whatever we can to get the civilians out of harm's way. We have an enemy who wants to put the civilians in harm's way. Yeah. That's part of their war strategy. And it doesn't surprise me that after 7 days, the world is calling for a ceasefire because, listen, Pete, the world is very sympathetic to Israel when we're victims and very sympathetic to the Jewish people when we're victims. And then they'll give speeches of never again and never again. But when Israel is a victor, when Israel is actually doing what it has to do in order to survive, in order to defeat the enemy, that's when the world begins to turn on Israel. And I hope that the Biden administration will continue to stand strong and push back against it. Those people that you see in the protests, they don't want any kind of peace between Israel and the Palestinians. They want to remove the state of Israel. They say they want to free from the river to the sea. That means the end of Israel. That means a genocide against Jews. The president of the United States and all the leaders in the United States should speak very forcefully against it. And I guarantee you, if you asked any of those protesters what they want for Israel, they would say just the destruction of Israel. And if you ask them what they think about America, you'd be very surprised. Maybe you wouldn't, but some people would be very surprised about their answer, what they think about the United States.
They don't have anything good to say about the United States either, Ron. You're exactly right.
Usually those people who hate Israel hate America because they see us, our enemies see us as you. And we are united together. We share the same values. We support the same causes. We are two nations who believe in freedom and democracy and human rights, and we stand against an enemy that believes in none of these things. And all of those people who are saying, well, we want to support the Palestinians. Why would you support a terror organization that is committed not just to the genocide of Jews, but brutalizes its own people, is misogynist, kills gays? Why would any self-respecting progressive ever support an organization like Hamas? It's shameful.
It's a great question. You're exactly right. Ron Dermer, God bless you. Godspeed in your efforts ahead.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.